Okay, perfect. So thank you for being here on a Saturday morning. We are Applied AI Club. So if you've not heard of us before, there is a small introduction. Okay. All right. So a little bit about what we do over here. So we run this community called Applied AI Club. So we started this a year ago, last February. And there are three main things that we do. One is we conduct these weekly sessions. So today is one of those weekly sessions that we actually do. We do this as it goes every single week, almost every single week. Saturdays 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. is what we actually focus on. So we are a community which is focused on, helping people learn and adopt AI. We are mostly focused on operators, builders, and non-technical folks. So we have an expert, either one of us within the community or where an external expert usually comes in and talks about a specific concept around AI. Right? And these are very in-depth sessions. Some of them are foundational, which will help you get started with different tools. Some of them are like completely in-depth, which will help you go deeper into a specific problem. If you guys can mute, that will be great. Yeah. So yeah, we've done about like close to 50 sessions so far. All our sessions are recorded and put up in YouTube. So you can go to AppliedAI, this URL in YouTube, and you can check all the past sessions. Okay. Now, the second thing that we have is that we have a WhatsApp community. We have 500 plus people in the community who we mostly use that for daily asking questions or any kind of interactions that you have in your day-to-day life with respect to AI. So you can use that community. We've kind of kept it high signal, low noise so far, and we aim to continue to do that as it continues to grow. If you are interested in this, just go to AppliedAI.club and sign up. So we'll add you to the WhatsApp group and you can be part of it. Right. The third thing we do is a study group. So study group is a self-learning kind of a concept. Again, we provide you all the materials, the guides and other things to learn by yourself. So these happen over a period of 3 to 4 weeks, where you join a group of people who actually learn a particular tool or a concept or something to actually together. Right. So by the end of the study group, we end up building a product, and you showcase that product during our so-called demo day on all these weekends to the rest of the world. Right. So again, this is also meant for you to learn a particular concept. The one that we are actually starting, the next one we are starting is this weekend. So we are going with the concept of building a finance agent. So next weekend, next Saturday, we'll have a session on how to build finance agents. You can use it as a concept, think of your own project, and you can build that project over the next 4 weeks. We will share a deck around this on like more details, like how to participate, how to be part of the group, and what are the cadences, etc. So if you think that you can spend a few hours a week on over the next 4 weeks, you should actually join this. Okay. So that's a bit about the club. And if you're interested, again, like go join AppliedAI Club. So everything is free. So we don't make money off any of these things, including this session, including the study groups or whatever. So everything is completely free. So feel free to go and join this. Right. So coming to today's session. So today's session is, a lot of folks in our community kept asking about how do we actually use Claude Code. There is not one way to use Claude Code. I've been using it for the last 2.5 months, and it's been incredible. It's probably like the biggest game changer that I've had since I started, working with AI. And today I'll show you some of the workflows that I actually use for why do those actually make sense and how to think about it. It is going to be a foundational course. I'm not going to go in depth into all the complex architectures we can actually put in place. The idea is that by Monday, you basically get started with this whole thing. Okay. So some housekeeping before we actually get started. Given that this is a fairly long session, put up, and we have a lot of people in the audience, so put in your questions in the chat. We'll have somebody from the community or me, so we'll look at it periodically and we will respond to those questions, unless there is something that you have to interrupt. Right? In that case, use your judgment and feel free to do that. We will spend the last 10 minutes again in answering questions and answers. Okay. Again, this is being recorded. It's going to go on YouTube. So if you don't share any sensitive information. And if you do, let us know so that we can actually cut this when we post on YouTube. All right. So with that, we can get started. Right. So before I jump in and give you a demo, talk about like all the Claude Code, what is it, etc. Right? I want to start with a very, very simple demo of the whole thing. Yeah, so we will go with, yeah, ignore, don't worry about the terminal. We'll go through all of this. We'll see why, what, all of these things, etc. But I'm going to show you this much. Okay. So I have a bunch of invoices in this particular page. So if I show you, so this is a sample invoice, right, or from Cloudflare. If I open another sample invoice, let's say from Anthropic. So these are different sample invoices that I have. Again, all these invoices are generated by Claude. But I have a bunch of these sample invoices in this folder. So the folder will be the same as this, right? So typically how I work is when I have these sample invoices, I simply go open Claude and I simply tell Claude, hey, I have a bunch of invoices here. Can you review them, highlight any problems, and create spreadsheet I can share with my CA, right? So that's it. So I do things like this and I kind of like move on. It's very similar to what you use on, your ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, but there are special advantages to kind of using Claude Code to kind of like do all of this. Okay. So I'm going to let it continue run for a while and then we will get started with the session itself. So this is kind of like how I use Claude Code. Now, before we start, can you put up your hands on whoever has used Claude Code in the past? All right, this is not too many. Okay. How many of you have never used any of these chat GPTs and Gemini or Claude or other things? So you can put your hands down and probably like go for the next question. So how many of you have never used any of these AI tools in a regular basis? Okay, I don't think many. Okay, so some people most of you are using, Claude desktop or a ChatGPT desktop, or I don't even have ChatGPT. Yeah. So like a UI interface like this, I assume, right? Okay, even this I have not installed. Okay. Yeah. So let's see if our work is actually. Yeah, let it still run. Okay. So now let's come to what Claude Code. While Claude is doing its work, we'll go and see what the work is. But let's see what Claude Code is and how is it different from what you're actually using today, and when does it make sense for you to use something like that. Okay. Now I want to go take a step back and think about what are the different levels of AI assistants that we can actually use today, right? So the sound you heard in the behind is basically Claude asking me for responses. So just gonna okay. Now there are four
What
levels.
did it say? I actually thought somebody interrupted.
No, so whenever Claude needs a request from me, like I need to go and respond, it makes a sound so that I can go check what it actually wants.
C'est si bon d'être roi.
Yeah, this sound basically says that Claude has finished its work. Right. So
Okay,
I've set up these
nice.
things. I set up these things because I have like 4 or 5 windows operating all the time. So it makes it easier for me to work with.
Nice.
Okay. We'll cover some of those also today. There is so much. Okay, so yeah, so 6 invoices is there, total 9,000 US dollars. Everything is fine. Oh, this invoice is overdue. Indian
Bala, can
vendor.
you make the screen a bit bigger?
Oh, sorry.
This terminal one.
Yeah. Is it better now?
Yeah, much better.
Yeah. So yeah, some of the highlights, say, for example, this is 6 days overdue. There is an Indian vendor billing in GST, which, yeah, I didn't think of. Confirm payment actually went through, whatever. So most important thing is, right. Okay, sounds good. Document this and create a spreadsheet. Sample CA. Okay. Yeah, so this is kind of how I work with Claude, guys. I give it like an input, go do its work. I don't even look at it. Oh, it says spreadsheet is already created. Let me just open the spreadsheet. I pressed command plus click, so it opens that particular file. And we see it here. So we have the invoices, invoice date, everything is fully extracted. What is the payment status? It is overdue. And
C'est si bon d'être roi.
if there is any notes, the notes is actually done. So what I do is I typically take this CSV or a Excel sheet and I send it to my who do you call CA, right? So this is typically how I actually operate, and this is where Cloud actually comes in. But we will come to like creating these workflows. Like, there are many things that we do. So the deck that you actually see here today, this is 100% created by Claude. I didn't even edit many things in this. So this is typically how I actually work. We'll get to all of that. But before we do that, it is important to understand how do we think about different levels of AI and where does actually Claude actually fit in. Okay. Now this is something that I actually created. There are 4 levels of AI that at least I have seen so far. Number 1 is basically assistants. We don't use assistants anymore. This was probably a year and a half ago. And the assistants are basically like the original ChatGPT or a Claude, where you open this interface, you send a message and you get a response back. Okay. It even understands like it says that, hey, knowledge cutoff, it gives you 2 years earlier information, etc., etc. So it was very useful, but it couldn't do anything. It is basically something like a brain, right? So brain is, you ask questions, it has some knowledge, it gives you an answer, right? So that is where the original assistance thing actually came in. The second thing is agents. So agents is what you see with respect to all these tools. Now Claude can search the web. Claude can update your CRM. So all these SaaS platforms integrate, AI, I'm saying Claude, but AI. All these platforms integrate AI into their SaaS platforms, which can do certain jobs by itself. Like, for example, meeting recorder in Zoom records this information automatically and transcribes it, right? So these are like ability for these AI platforms to use tools by themselves. So that is the concept called agents. So agent is basically assistant plus action. So you can think of it as brain plus hands. Anything that contains action is basically an agent. An agent was probably a last year kind of like a concept. And the next evolution to that is basically what we call co-work agents. So Claude Code is one of the co-work agents. So how do we think about Claude Code? So if you think of agents as something where, you give a job, you specify how to use a tool, it goes use a tool, it does certain operations and comes back and gives you an output, then you do something else, which is typically what you do in these platforms, where, let's say, if I have these PDFs, I will copy paste these PDFs into Claude and I will get a response back. And you basically download the CSV, you send it to somebody else or whatever, all of this shit actually happens, right? So that is typically what agents is. Co-work is where you don't necessarily have to guide the AI at every point in time. The way to think about co-work agents is, like, if you see the action that we just performed, where we created these invoices, I simply gave an input. I did not tell it how to do it. I did not give it the format of the CSV or an Excel it is supposed to create. I left it to its own judgment because I trust its judgment. Okay. Now, this is what we call kind of like a handoff approach. Now, imagine that you are working in an office and you have let's say, a junior marketing professional, right? Let's say you are a marketing leader. You have somebody to manage your digital campaigns. You tell them, hey, what is a campaign we are going to run? What does a good outcome actually looks like, right? And for what purpose? You clarify the objective and the end result, success criteria really well. That person is going to handle their jobs. Okay. Now that is the thought process with respect to the co-work agents. You basically give instructions and success criteria. You don't necessarily have to follow how they are actually doing their work. Okay. This is where Claude Code and like a lot of these co-work agents are doing like a phenomenal job. You necessarily don't have to follow what all things it actually does. For example, it even hides everything. You don't even have to read any of this because these are not important. You don't have to follow every step. Okay, so this is an important distinction. If you don't understand this, let me know. We can kind of go through this again. Now, the fourth one, which is not something that we are covering in this session, we did a previous session on this, which is called OpenClaw. Now, NVIDIA has already launched their own version. I don't remember, NanoClaw or whatever. Now, this is something very interesting. This is where AI is going, which is kind of autonomous. Now, imagine the same office scenario. You are the marketing head, and you have, let's say, somebody who is in finance. Okay, let's say you want to run a campaign. You have to get something done from finance, like let's say you're adding the credits in your Facebook or whatever, etc. You don't necessarily tell the people what a success criteria look like. Your finance guy is a peer, he's not your subordinate where you go and give instructions. You basically tell them, hey, this job needs to be done, just go do this job. And you know they'll do a good job. You don't necessarily have to even set the proper objectives. You simply say, hey, this is what I want it done, and they'll know how to actually get it done. So they have their own thoughts, intuitions, understanding of how to do a good job. So this is kind of like an independent colleague, which is what your OpenClaw or NanoClaw, everything is actually doing, which is a very, very fascinating development in the AI world. Like this is how probably 3 to 6 months down the line it's going to look like. A lot of safety mechanisms and other things are being figured out. It's still a very evolving space, but this is what you'll actually see in in a few months. Okay. I see a bunch of questions. I'm going to quickly see if anything is relevant. Oh, there is a question on Cowork. See, Cowork and Claude Code is the same. Cowork is just a visual interface for Claude Code. I will talk about that visual interface versus this and compare to this one. So let's see if anything. Nemo Cloud data URL to Cloud terminal, how secure it is in terms of third party. Yeah, we'll talk about security in a bit, folks. Yeah, Claude Code and Cowork are exactly the same. It's just that it's a UI interface for Claude Code is how the Cowork thing actually started. So we don't have to worry. For all practical purposes, use what is convenient to you. But I would say put in a little bit effort and try to use a terminal. And there is a reason for that. Okay. Right.
Bala, sorry if it's a basic question. So the third part which you have mentioned here, right? If I use Gemini in a thinking mode and I ask questions and it gives me the same analysis, how different it is than the Claude Code part?
Yeah. See, Gemini, so the difference is only, so underlying LLM is the same for all three actually. Okay. The only thing that has actually changed is how do we interact with it. Now
the terminal
reason
part
why,
and the UI interface?
Yeah, part of it, like 50% probably is the terminal versus UI interface. Another 50% is, now let's say you're working with Gemini. Okay. Okay. So in case of Gemini, folks, mute yourself, please. In case of Gemini, when you work with Gemini and let's say the Gemini interface, right? If you give an objective, it does all the jobs by itself and it actually comes back, then it is kind of like a Cowork agent. Okay. The problem you have in the UI interface is because it can't build on the work that you've actually done in the past very, very efficiently. Okay. The terminal interface is built for natively building on the past work that you've actually done. That means you'll get compounded outputs. This is something that probably will make more sense while we go ahead. But the big difference between 2 and 3 is basically you don't have to follow how it actually does the work. That is the big difference between 2 and 3, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I know I'm not very, very clear on this, but hopefully it'll make sense when we go towards the end.
Okay.
All right. So we will. Yeah, this is something we already covered. Like typically what you do is you copy paste into an interface like this. And once you get a response, then you put it in your local folders. So that's what we typically work with AI. The thing with Claude Code is that instead of UI, it works on your computer at a local level and it does all the work. And every file is stored in the local files only. Yeah. So every file gets stored in your local directory, which makes life much, much easier. So we'll talk about that in a second. All right. So why am I so gung-ho with terminal? Like context, I'm not a developer. I've been a product guy. I've used Terminal probably like some 15 years ago for a bunch of my work. But other than this, I've not used Terminal. But the unlock with respect to Claude actually happens in a Claude, or anything else actually happens in a Terminal. I'll tell you why. Right? Now, if you think about human beings, so when we think about computers in general, we started with the bash operating system, which is completely everything terminal, where people do command, they enter like, change directory or make directory or etc. So a lot of these command line prompts used to happen for a while. Now, when Windows actually came on top of BIOS, they built this entire GUI, right? Graphical user interface. The reason why we did that is because human beings are generally visual. We learn by vision more than just by actually reading. That's why videos is like most people prefer, in general, prefer like videos and pictures, etc. They say picture makes 1,000 words because human beings in general are like very, very visual animals. We see it and we actually learn a lot more than by reading text. Okay. Now, if you think about LLMs are 100% completely opposite. They actually do a lot more with text. They understand text very, very natively compared to images. Okay, at least so far, right? Now, if you give, so you guys would have actually done this. So if you give a browser, you go to a browser and you ask Claude to, sorry, or any LLM to, hey, navigate my web interface, etc. It actually struggles. So even today, it's about like 72% efficiency is what the best of the best models have actually achieved, because it's very hard to read all the pixels, the positionings, the colors, the understanding, the layers, etc. LLMs are not very, very kind of like visual. Okay. But if you look at like from a terminal point of view, they can write commands and they can get inputs much, much faster. Okay. So if you look at something like a terminal, it is everything is text. So if you ask LLM to do a job, its ability to write text to do things is much, much faster compared to, let's say, kind of like a UI interface. Where a good example is, let's say, hey, I'll open something saying, get me the performance. There are two things. Okay, let's say I take a web asset, something like, my website, and I can go to Google Performance Insights. There is to be something, right? Yeah, so Search Console Performance or whatever. So it'll give you a description of how your site is actually performing. I can do that, which is visual, which is great for human beings. But if I ask an LLM to do the same thing, it'll actually struggle because it needs to navigate to the left panel, click on the buttons, open the graphical interface, see the chart, etc. It's not very, very native. But if I ask it to go get me the performance of studio.AppliedAI.club, it can actually do it like much, much faster, because the information it also gets back is also something like text outcome. So natively, it kind of like understands text much, much better. Okay. Now, that is the reason why terminal is much more useful for, terminal is like a big unlock for something like Claude Code. Okay. Now, you might think, okay, like I'm not used to this. I'm not a developer. I don't want to use like terminal. It's something completely new or whatever. You don't have to learn much. You probably need to spend 10 minutes of your time in getting used to it. I'll help you through this. But even if that is difficult, just go ahead and use something like Claude Cowork, right? You'll get the same output, but you probably will get about like 70% of the unlock, which is still pretty great. Okay. Now, the way we will actually go ahead, enough theory. The way we'll actually go ahead is by doing 3-4 demos of how I actually use Claude Code, and I'll explain how to set up this thing in a much more efficient manner. Okay. So a few examples I've thought about is, how to do customer research before a sales call, processing a stack of invoices. This is something that we already saw. How do we use internally? This is a slightly larger concept. I'll explain the concept on how we do this. So every week we conduct these web recordings. We take those videos and the entire video processing happens on Claude without me touching anything, complete video editing, right? And we'll also talk about how do I generate, let's say, a case study for case study PDF for any of my customer visits or whatever. Right. And finally, we'll talk about how do you set up Claude in a way which can help you, compound on a daily basis. Right? So that's what we'll do today. The first thing is, let's say we do a customer research before a sales call. Okay, an example I'm going to take is, I need some input. Okay, before I jump in, let me see if there are any questions. Some of them can be taken towards the end. Yeah, security part, we'll talk about that a little bit. Technical, okay. All right, cool. So I have, let's say I have so I run this studio called AppliedAI Studio as part of this, which is our
C'est si bon d'être roi.
I'll mute the sound. Sorry. Okay, yeah, it has given me some results. Yeah, my performance is not timed, right? So not bad. So I did all this work without me going to. So if you have your website, it's an interesting thing to see too. Like just go say, get me the performance of whatever website you have, and Claude
Bala,
should be
can you
able
make
to.
it a little bit more bigger, man?
Oh, sorry, yeah. So all I did is say, get me the performance of AppliedAI Club, studio.appliedaI Club. I don't have to follow what it actually does. I just gave it like permission to execute. It figured out all of this stuff by itself. Okay, that means I don't have to give instructions, say these are the 4 steps for you to follow. It did all things by itself. So this is like kind of like the biggest unlock that we have. Okay, now let's say we want to do something like this, which is let's say I have a call with Grow. Grow is not a customer, it's just like a random thing. Grow in 30 minutes. The service that we actually offer is what you call, we are a service agency for building AI products. And how do we actually pitch to, let's say, a new company like Grow? Okay. Now I'm not doing much. You can do a lot more stuff here, but I'm going to keep it very, very simple. Now, the first thing you do is install Claude Code. I have already installed, but I will tell you how to install it. So if you are in Mac or Linux, just copy paste this command. If you are in Windows, copy paste this command. Okay. So once you do that, you will be able to do something like this. So go to any folder. So what I do is, good way of organizing things. I have a folder called projects, where I put all my individual projects. So each project has a separate folder. And in each folder, I have like subfolders if I'm doing like kind of like different things. And I make sure I organize stuff this way. And there is a reason to organize it this way. We will see it on how do we actually structure this. Now, all my stuff related to my service business is under AppliedAI agency. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to projects, AppliedAI agency. Okay. I go to that particular folder and I just say Claude. Okay. Now Claude has actually opened. Now this is doing the CD and typing this command is the only thing you have to learn. You don't have to learn anything else with respect to terminal. That's the most beautiful part. It probably takes 5 minutes for you to learn what is change directory means or how do you type Claude or whatever. Once you get into this interface, it's just human natural language. So you can just type whatever you want. So I'm going to say that, what is the command? So I have a call with Grow, right? So I'm going to copy, I will paste, and I will say use. Now the best part is I've already set up a lot of case studies, use cases, etc. in my website, right? So I have different solutions for different things. I have written a lot of blog posts, etc. All of those things are actually there. I will simply use the case studies we have, or what do you call, pieces from the site to provide a targeted offering. Okay. Now this is all I do. Once I give it, if it has any questions, it'll ask me any kind of like questions. The advantage that you actually get over here is this entire content of my website is actually present in this folder. Basically, you see all this content, like everything, including the website content and everything is actually here. So whenever it wants to do a research, it will use all this information to synthesize. It knows me, it knows my business, it knows what I have presented for other companies in the past. right? It uses all this information. Like for example, I'll have some text somewhere. Yeah, I don't even remember. Yeah, I have a few. So it reads all of those things. It automatically creates the best deck that I can actually think of for this particular customer. So literally what I do is I start a session like this, I give it instructions, and I move on to other tasks that I actually have rather than focusing on, giving instructions, following up, making edits, etc. And almost 100% of the time is 95% there. Okay. Let me see if there are any questions. How do you monitor token usage by giving it such a large, okay, token usages? We'll take these guys things towards the end, guys. Yeah, I mean, it's not a big problem right now. I mean, it shows how much cost I'm actually spending, etc. So I have the max $100 plan. I hardly ever run out of it. I probably get to about 90%, 95%, and I use it a lot, right? So I've never felt constrained by it except for a couple of weeks in the last 2-3 months. So I don't think that's a big problem, but I'll talk about how do we do some of the best practices. But first, let's understand how we actually do this. Now let it run. We probably will go look at our next task, right? Now, the important thing, so you heard of this concept called skills in Claude, right? So now let's say I'm doing this research for the first time. Okay, the first time I'm actually writing, like I give it all the instructions, etc. I say, how do you create the case studies, do all of these things, etc. So it just creates the the deck or like the document, etc. Whatever I actually need. But let's say I have a research call every day or twice a day, etc. So which is what automatically happens for a lot of what do you call a lot of companies like SaaS companies or sales companies. Whenever you're actually there, it happens quite a bit. So it's just creating a research brief right now. Okay, let's see what it has done. Okay. They believe in AI portion of this team, which is offside and good for the call. Let's read this brief. 1 second. It's too hard to read. So it has given a beautiful report. Yeah, it knows my name is Bala. It knows what I actually do. It does all of these things. Engineers. Okay, we are the founders. You have the research context, where we fit. Okay, I mean, this seems okay. I'm not going to run this. This is obviously, I don't send this directly to them. But we can also say, hey, like, why don't you create a deck, which I can send them. Okay, so now it created a research report. I simply ask it to create a deck. It'll go ahead and create a PDF. A good thing is I have done a few PDFs in the past for some of the other customers. Okay, not all of the decks are actually present here, but it does see like some of the other customers have created the decks. So what it does is it uses that information. It understands how I've actually structured the past decks that I've actually done. It'll use the same structure to create a new deck. That means I don't have to give instructions on how to create decks every single time. It just compounds on top of what I have actually already done in the past. For example, this deck, what you actually see over here, this is done in one shot. Obviously, there are a few things I can improve, like overlaps and other things, etc., which I typically do for live customers if you're actually sending. But for this demo, this is okay. So I just gave it like a one shot. It created this entire deck. I probably edited a couple of slides and we are good to go. And it's a pretty decent deck for any kind of like opportunities. Right? So this is how you do one thing and you kind of like build on top of it. Now, the best thing is it picks up all the brand guidelines for this deck from my website. So if you go into my website, I use these strong colors like bold characters, etc. A lot of like dark and like gray. This is not exactly gray, but light white kind of like a brand. So when it builds the deck, it takes inspiration from my site, and it also, because we are using Claude, it made this orange as the brown as kind of like the main thing because it understands these contexts. I don't have to explicitly provide instructions, which is a massive unlock. Okay.
I have one question. How did it understand the brand guidelines? Like, was it because the data is in your folder, root folder,
Yes.
or is it
Yes.
because?
the data, see the current folder I have is called AppliedAI agency, which is where my website content is there. So my website, like for the engineering stuff, the website is built by Claude under this folder. So when it creates a deck, it reads the entire folder, it figures out, hey, like this is the website, it picks up the brand guidelines from there.
So instead of adding the folder, can we also add the website link?
Yeah, that works beautifully. I don't always have the folder. For me, it's an advantage because I also develop the website along with this. But a lot of cases, let's say I work with clients, I just point out, hey, like take the brand guidelines from, you say what website you want, it'll automatically fetch from there. Now that is one. But when you are doing it over and over again, right? Like when it reads from a website again, Claude is not very visual. It might be good enough, but you'll have to do some corrections, probably like last 10%. What you actually do is, hey, why don't you save the brand guidelines as a file for reuse? Okay, so I do this. Next time it will take all these guidelines, it will create a small file locally. So it doesn't have to go refer to it again and again. And all the corrections you are given are stored locally in the brand guidelines. So it will just directly use those brand guidelines. So that's the advantage of a file. You use the same thing in, let's say, the Claude interface. I know Claude Work does the same thing, but let's say you normally use a Claude interface or a Gemini or ChatGPT, it is very difficult to do that, right? So this is where the compounding effect kind of like comes in. Okay.
So also in terms of the libraries, like the previous example you showed for invoice summarization and so on. So there is OCR, there is also some Python kind of framework it's probably using. So are these like libraries locally in the folder, or Claude has a local instance with these libraries pre-installed, or it goes to the cloud? Can we control all this?
Yeah, you can. So some of the things that you do is Claude will try to install. Whenever it tries to install a package it needs, it'll ask you permissions. You say yes or no, or you can give suggestions saying that, hey, don't use this, use that one. That is something you can do. In some advanced cases, looks like it is. In some advanced cases, one of the examples we do is, if you guys remember the Luma invite we created, the invite has this image. You see this small image that is there. This image is generated by Claude. Okay, how does it create this image? What I do is I have created a Claude skill, which we'll see next, where I have said, instructed Claude how to use Nano Banana, Gemini's Nano Banana, right? So I just give saying that, hey, this is a session, this is a date, this is a time, this is a presenter, and this is a presenter's LinkedIn. Go ahead and create an image. Claude creates instructions, uses Nano Banana to create these images. It creates one for Luma and one for LinkedIn for me, and it gives me the images, right? All I have to do is I just have to copy paste the images. I'll show you how it actually looks. Events, 21st March. Okay, where is it? So open. Actually, it's easier to show it over here. Yeah, you see these event thumbnails. So this one was created for LinkedIn, and this one is created for Luma. So yeah, it just uses that. So you can do all of these things. Now, probably it's time for us to see this. Yeah, you don't have to learn this. It will create but I'm going to show you how our new deck actually looks like. I'm just running my website so that I can view this. But let's hope it works. Yeah, it's pretty decent. So it has taken my core website's color, the brand, the black, etc., all of those, and it used my thumbnail, and it created this entire deck. See, gross, like what is my, needs to be 18 years. Yeah, fintech experience. He took my fintech experience. Fintech, I've not worked in a fintech for a while, and we did one project with fintech and voice AI, right? That's not even kind of like the main thing that we focus on, but it knows that Grow is a fintech, so it created a fintech deck, right? yeah, it's pretty decent. Like I'll probably go through it, edit it a couple of times, and I'll send it across. But it's good enough for me to send it to my customers directly. I'll just do a command P, and it should get. It's not print ready. I'll just simply say, hey, go make it print ready. Now, we're kind of running out of time, so I'll rush a little bit. Coming to the next part. Now, this is where most of the unlock actually happens. Now, what we did is we asked you to create a deck. We said, hey, give these instructions, give these instructions. We said create a deck, etc. Now, what I can say is, can you convert this to a skill? Given a company URL or a brand name, you need to give me a PDF deck. Okay, so this is like a massive unlock. So I'll tell you what a skill is. A skill is basically, imagine that you have a subordinate in your office and you want to teach them something new. Like, how do I create, let's say, a proper website, or how do you launch, how do you analyze balance sheet, or it could be, how do I send an email to a competitor, a customer. So you can have all of these things. So these are basically things that you actually teach them. Now imagine you documenting them, right? So what you do is you open a simple file, right? So and you simply type saying that, hey, like this is how we actually do it. Like be courteous. First line should have the value, keep it short. So yeah, it could be anything. This is typically how you actually give instructions to a colleague, colleague or a subordinate or whoever it actually is. Now you do the same thing for AI, and that's basically what skill is. It's trying to read some of my older skills so it understands the skill structure. Okay. So now once if I save, like what I'll do is I don't even have to know how the skill is supposed to look like. I don't have to create this document. Claude knows what I have done in this session. So using that, it is going to create a skill on its own. Now, once it creates a skill, I can come back, let's say 10 days down the line. I will simply say, hey, create a deck for, let's say, DB World. Using either I can say using our skill, or most likely you can simply say create a deck for DP World, it will figure it out. Okay, by itself. So I don't have to provide all these instructions. If I'm going to do it every day, it does all of those things by itself. Okay, and you can keep updating the skill so that it can do more and more stuff. Any questions? Any questions before we move on to the next one?
Hey, does the skill need to be in the same folder?
Yes, I would. No, it depends on whether you want to use this skill local to this project or globally across all of the things. If it is local to this project, I would keep a skill locally. Otherwise, it needs to move to a global page. I'll talk about how you construct it. Okay, so it has created a skill, right? Yeah, it has created a skill where it talks about, use sales tag or a company project, whatever, get a tailored company name, URL. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't give it like so big. I would ask it to convert it a little, make it a little shorter, but decent place to start. Okay. Now, once a skill is
Bala,
actually,
if I summarize the skill part, so basically the interaction that you have done, and you asked Claude to do a set of things. You want that set of things to be reproducible again. So now whatever you have done is like you have given it. I mean, I don't know if we can call it. Yeah, it is called skill, but it has not learned anything. But it has learned the way you wanted to do things, and you have exported that.
Yeah, it's basically a set of
exported instructions. So we have exported so that next time you don't give the same instruction, and you probably repeat it for a number of use cases that you want.
So I can just open Claude next time. So because a new session, I just control seed. That means the session is ended. It doesn't remember any of that. I can simply go and say, what do we call this? Sales deck, right? Yeah, there is a sales deck. Oops, I'm not supposed to use sales deck. I'll probably say DP World. Okay. So that's all. I don't have to give any other instructions, and next time it'll run sales deck.
It knows what your expectations. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to. Yeah, it's trying to
The
put
name of the skill you created?
it created by itself called sales deck, right? I can even specify, hey, change the name to this. That's still okay. Again, you don't have to type anything. You don't have to code anything, right? I have not written code in like months. It does everything by itself. That's the beauty of it.
Suppose
Okay.
sorry, can I ask one question?
Sure.
Yeah, supposing we have a use case like, I want to monitor my AWS account, okay, periodically, and it should read the content in those pages and give me a summary, something like
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah.
can it do it natively, or like how tedious is it to set this kind of thing up?
You just, I mean, I don't know what you want to monitor, but let's say humanly, if you do it,
Yeah.
right? Just do
Yeah.
it with Claude once. Probably takes like 1 or 2 hours, makes sense. After that, it'll do it by itself. I'll give you an example of a very similar thing. That's something we are going to next. So invoices we already spoke about. We'll come to the webinar stuff. So this is something we do. If you look at our AppliedAI Studio, so
Look, can I ask a question, please?
Yeah.
If how long would it take for a first time thing to be set up? Like you've showing us some things now. Is this the
Yeah.
same thing that we get now? Do we get what we see if we start doing it now, or is it like a back and forth thing that you're doing, or you've given it some instructions already to kind of keep it in a guardrail kind of setup, or is it all like even if you start doing this first time, is it going to be doing it the same way? Or has
Yeah.
it reached here through its own understanding of all these processes? That's what I'm trying to understand.
Yeah. See, about 90% of it does not have previous context, right? Whatever I showed you today, the only thing it actually fetched from is the content of my website. And the text I've created already. So that context it has, so it does everything perfectly the first time. If you have to do it, all you have to do is just say, hey, take inspiration from this particular website. That's the one extra line that you have to give, where it'll do some other extra effort to kind of like pull it in. Okay. But what I would say in terms of starting is, say that you're going to spend 2 weeks and put in that effort, kind of like 2 weeks to make sure some of the basic stuff is actually set up. Without that, you will not get like value, and it is all about compounding. The first few weeks, probably you'll put in a little bit more effort than what you're actually getting. But once that compounding starts hitting, it just accelerates like crazy. Okay, so don't go on with the mindset that like first day I want like this kind of output. You probably will not. You'll have to go do a lot of back and forth, but the compounding effect is kind of like crazy. I'll give you an example right away, right? So it kind of covers both the questions in the past.
Thank you.
So you see our website. There is a blog and glossary that we actually run, and we have a few web assets which we actually do this for. We do comparisons, we do weekly digests, etc. All of these things. Okay, I open any of this. These are like very solid posts which are actually written, which is very, very high quality. We have a lot of focus on how do you create like high quality content, etc., etc. So this is basically a news article which actually gets created. Okay. Now, a lot of AI companies do AI slops. Like every company just runs it through Claude. They create a blog post. They publish just like check mark saying that I have created a content piece. And we are not like that. We stand for the quality of output that we are actually going to deliver. So that means even if you are creating a blog post, which is so ours is a one-person company, right? So I don't have the time to go and write blog posts for every single thing. But how do I create high quality content without me personally spending all of this time and effort? Right? So it's a very, very decent blog post if you're actually looking. It has all the tables, it has the internal links, it has like previous editions. A lot of times it creates tools and charts and other things. It does all of these things by itself. Now, how do we do this? I don't want to create a deck. Yeah. So how do I do this? This is my SEO pipeline that we have actually set up. And we have kind of like productized it that we can use it for multiple assets. Now, every Sunday, I have an agent called Mitra. Okay, so Mitra is it's concept called agent. It's very similar to a skill, like a bunch of skills put together is what we call an agent. Okay, so what Mitra does it is connected to my post.org. It pulls all my performance of my website, every single page from post.org. It analyzes that performance, compares it with what happened in the previous weeks, It checks what my competitors have done during the same time, like what areas they're actually focusing on. It figures out what my SEO strategy, what are the gaps in terms of my content pipeline is looking like, what are the keywords, what topics I'm not covering, what I should cover, etc. And it creates a 7-day calendar. And this I run every week, once a week. And after that, I have another agent called Adam. Adam, what it does is it picks up the topic from Mitra. It researches. Research is a very, very novice kind of like a word. What it does is it first goes and pulls all the external information, articles, etc. I've also given Adam on all the books and PDFs related to the topic, like how AG agents are supposed to work, etc. Because I wanted to have opinion on how a problem needs to be solved. I think good products are highly opinionated. That's something my principle. That's my principle. So what we do is we take like the best of books and blog posts and other things which talk about how do you approach AI, and Adam has access to all of that. So it researches the topic, then it spins up what do you call something like a we call it a panel. So it creates a CEO, it creates a CTO, it creates an operations, it creates a CFO, it depends on the blog post. It creates 5 personas, and the personas basically argue amongst each other on this topic. So argument actually creates a lot of point of views and opinions. And once the argument is created, then using that as like the master overview, we write the content, then we generate the visuals, then we do the internal linkings, then we do SEO, AEO, all of this, and we do publish to production. Obviously, this took me more than a week to kind of like do it step by step, right? It took me a lot of time to kind of set it up. But once I set it up, now it's just one command. All I do is go to Claude and I simply say run Adam. If I simply say run Adam, it'll run. It'll take the instruction to run this whole pipeline and push it to production, right? That's a compounding that you can actually, kind of like do today. Obviously, I'm not going to go through this in the interest of time, but yeah, we can talk about it later if you want.
Bala, before you move,
yeah.
I have a couple of questions, if that's okay.
Can we just like quickly close the rest before because we have only 4 minutes. I don't want to keep people longer. We'll stay for like probably 15-20 minutes after the call.
Sure, no worries.
Now, another small thing, probably I'll quickly rush through this. So what we do is we record this session, right? So we take this recording, we then have another pipeline to kind of like edit all of this. So it goes through Claude. We have a separate local LLM to transcribe the entire video audio, separate it out. Then there is a agent. What it does is it cuts the video for unnecessary intro. I said like, hey, like thank you for joining. Oh, I see that people are still like joining, etc. So a lot of these things are unnecessary. So it cuts out all those elements. It cuts out long pauses. If there is something I'm sharing and I'm getting stuck, etc., cuts out those stuff, etc., and creates a neat trimmed video. First of all. Second is then it matches the video, creates chapters, who is talking what. It figures out who is the speaker, what is their point of view, etc., to create like kind of like summaries. Then it creates YouTube metadata, it creates thumbnails, and it uploads it to YouTube with all this information. For the last 3-4 weeks, whatever we have uploaded is 100% done by AI. I don't do any of those things by myself. And finally, it creates a blog post in my website and pushes my website. So this entire pipeline is again done by 100% by AI. Right. Apart from this, we do LinkedIn carousels. There is one thing that we are doing with respect to video creations with the same content. So all of those things are upcoming, but someday I'll have to find some time. Right. So this is kind of what you can get to. And there are people who have done like phenomenal stuff with similar concepts. But this is what I'll do. Again, this deck is also created by AI. It took me like 15 minutes to do this whole thing. I'll quickly rush through the how do you set up the what do you call your laptop for this. So use something called iTerm. iTerm is it's not fancy. I don't have any fancy setup, but compared to the normal default terminals you get, iTerm I found useful. This is for Mac. I'm not sure what is for Windows. You saw the instructions we have for installing Claude. So that actually works. And then you need to think, once you start Claude, you need to think about 3 things. So number 1 is Claude MD, which is a master file, which is kind of like instructions you give to Claude. Second is skills, and third is tools. I wouldn't call it MCP, I'll call it tools, right? Memory is something it will create by itself. You don't have to worry about it. Now, how do you set it up? What you do is in your home folder, again, you have to get a little, so there is something called Claude.md. Okay, this it creates by itself. here you can give some basic working style. How do you want to approach all of this, etc. So your basic working style you can actually give over here. So Claude reads it every single time it actually launches so that it has an understanding of how we are actually supposed to work. So don't put any project specific or anything that you wanted to apply across the board. That's something you can actually give over here. Then within each project, you can create your own Claude MD. Okay, again, you don't have to do any of this by itself. When you go to Claude, you simply say, boss, can you update my local Claude.md file with these instructions? So it'll do it by itself. So you don't have to open these files and edit, but you just need to know the structure. The structure is global is basically applies for all the sessions. Then within each project, you have a Claude.md, which is project level specification. You simply say how you're supposed to work over here, right? Then, guys, if you're not speaking, can you mute? I'm hearing a lot of background noises. Yeah, so Claude.md will take care of local project level specifications. Okay. So interesting thing is, if you are working with technical projects, you tend to give a lot of instructions on, hey, this is how what I use for coding, this is what I use for front end, this is how you access a database, this is how my project is structured, or this is what the objective of whatever it actually is. You don't need to give any of this. Claude is actually very, very good at figuring it out by itself. So anything it can figure out by itself, you don't have to specify. It actually is better not to specify. A recent study kind of like made that very, very clear. But if something is not very intuitive, let's say your working style, how you're supposed to like write content, what is your point of view in terms of when you do things, etc. So in those cases, you better use what you call Claude.md to update all of this. Then when you ask it to add skills, again, if it is a global skill, you're using it for everything. For example, if I'm creating a deck, I'm always creating a deck for my studio, right? So I have deck related content only in studio. But let's say I want to create an image, like what you saw for my event image generation. That is something I use across context. I created for some customer details. I created for, again, my events. I created for some of the local projects that I actually work on. So I use it for multiple things. So that is kind of like global. How do you use Nano Banana to create images is something that I've made it global, right? So it depends on that. But that's all it is. You just tell Claude how you want it to set up. It will figure it out. Make enough mistakes. See, the only thing that you can do to fail in this particular domain is not trying enough. If you do it enough number of times and you fail enough number of times, in a month or two, you will be unstoppable. And if you don't use this, then you are lagging behind everyone is what I would actually say. All right, so that's what I have for today, folks. We are open for questions. I will first go through this. There is a lot of questions. I will go from the top.
Hey, Bala, I'll go. That's
yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Tell me. Yeah, Kaustubh. Okay, why not use Claude Code? We already answered. Etc. How security? Yeah, security is something that you guys have actually asked a few times. Now, it's very important to, so Claude asks you permissions every time it reads a file, every time it makes a, let's say, an API call, every time it installs a package, or every time you install a package, etc. So all of these things, it asks you permissions. Be very sure what permissions you're actually like giving to Claude, so it can read all of that. But in general, overall, if you do it within the project, it is actually more secure. Don't give it access to, let's say, your like root folder, your personal photos, your emails. I don't connect my emails at all with Claude emails, calendars, etc., because those are my personal information. Anything that deals with the professional information is something that I actually give. And I don't ask Claude to write emails or send messages, anything that deals with sending it to external folks. I know Claude is a lot more safe than others, but I still am fairly very skeptical. The one thing I've given it's a lot of access is writing code, which is okay because we are doing very less, what do you call, software that is being used by other people. There are a few where I'm very, very careful, but anything to do with like creating decks or updating my internal blog posts, etc., I have a little bit more free hand, right? And again, even those, it's good to have, separate agents doing like reviews and other things, which I have set up for a lot of things. To get started, like, don't worry about it. As long as you give access only to that folder that it is actually working on, you are more or less safe. But as you use it more and more, you'll understand what are the other security practices that you need to put in place. Very important, don't give your keys. Put your keys always in some .env file and ask Claude to programmatically read that code, not like read it as a text, right? So there is something called .env. You can just create a file called .env and put all your API keys over there. So it doesn't have full access to everything. So that's also something that you can actually do. We spoke about the library part. So Claude installs any library that actually, so the question is about like what happens, let's say for OCR, does it automatically install the libraries, etc.? It does. It asks you permissions to install those libraries. And if you're okay, just give it. More or less, Claude is actually very, very decently good. And it also can figure out stuff by itself, unless you're working on really large projects. For smaller projects, it does really well. So you can just give the default options. It usually works. Is this PPT built by Claude Code? Yes. Been using VS Code chat for Claude Code. Oh yeah, it's a miles difference. So I also used to use Claude Code on VS Code about 2-3 months ago. My usage or my productivity jumped probably like some 20x since I switched to Claude Code, mainly because VS Code, you are, or any kind of like coding terminal, you are doing a lot of back and forth. That means you are following what things are actually doing. What you do with like terminal is basically ad hoc. I can like probably initiate a task, probably 3-4 tasks, go do something else. And by the time I'm come back, most of the things are actually done. So that's how things work. Have been using Claude Code and Claude Desktop itself. Is there any difference in using terminals, not using terminal, etc.? Gautam has answered it beautifully. If that.
ఇది భరత్
Yeah,
అదే నేను ఇక్కడ చూసా ఈ భరత్ ఆ భరత్ ఒకటేనా అనుకున్నాను డౌట్.
Okay. Not for me, I guess. You have given Claude to access to your entire laptop. Yeah, specific projects, please. Thanks a lot, GMK.
I think
Hey, Bala, just a couple of questions when you have time.
Sorry?
Just a couple of questions when you have time.
Sure,
So just so two things I wanted to kind of focus on. One was your building out that content engine. You said it would take 7 days. And the other one is that a one-person company. I know you don't have a lot of time for it, but like 5 bullets on like steps to set up that content engine. And this one-person company, the tech bros have been talking about it for a while. It's very interesting. But like, how did you, even at a smaller scale, like what did you do? How did what? I'm assuming it's a longer conversation, but just
See, the principle is very, very simple, right? So as a person who is running it alone right now, see, when I say one-person company, I do take some help from experts. Gladly, I have a lot of very interesting people I'm connected to. So I take help whenever I need help. But most of the places where I get stuck is like this ad hoc operations. Operations work is, I want to configure something. I want to create this content piece. I want to put a post on LinkedIn. I want to create like Luma visit or edit these videos, etc. So the thing I do is I see whether how much time I'm actually spending on each of those. And one day I actually sit and try to automate all of that stuff. That's a very, very simple thing, right? So yeah, I don't do a lot of videos today because video is a bottleneck for me. My LinkedIn posts have gone down significantly because that's a bottleneck for me. So those are things I've planned next. So I'm going to sit one of these weekends, automate that, and then move on to the next one. Very, very simple.
But and from a usage perspective, I know you have the $100 plan. I have the $20 plan. I run into limits all the time. What I'm doing right now is I'm taking like individual conversations, going into typing mind, putting in like an API key, chatting it, asking it to give me a summary, and then putting it back into Claude. I mean, you're using the $100 one, so you probably wouldn't know, but any optimization techniques or
So yeah, I have not run into running out of credits multiple times, but like a few times I have. What I have done is I switch to the IDE if I need Claude in cases, but it's not optimal at all. Like I see a world of difference in that. What I have done is there is a Olama, which is a local hosting, service. where I use GLM5 as a local model to run a few things. It uses the same Claude Code, but the model is pretty stupid. That means you can do a lot of junk work. Okay, with that, you can't really do high value work with that. So that's something that I actually do. Actually last week I just took a half a day off, saying that okay, I don't have an option to use Claude, so let me sit and think. So
that's what my plan for this weekend is, except I'm just going to ask Claude to do it for me. Like just tell me what to do, man. I'll do it. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Sorry,
Okay.
one question. Sorry, Bala, just to on your what you just said, right? You connected Claude Code to an local Olama model. So theoretically or technically, if we just cut out the internet, can you still get it to work? Like if you have very PII kind of data, sensitive data, which you don't want it going out of your laptop, can CloudWorks still work with local models?
I don't know. I have not tested that Claude Code but there are open code and other frameworks which you can actually use, which is completely local. If I were a betting man, I would say that Claude Code is at least tracking the usage, etc. They wouldn't leave it like completely open to run on local, is my assumption, but I have not tested that. But you can explore open code and a few other frameworks which have since then come in.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Ramachandran has asked, can Claude identify the best prices of items with exact quality stipulations and delivery timelines for a small business? What access need to be given, shared, operationally, how does it work if you are a comparative? Oh my God, it's a large project in itself.
Okay.
I would like to know more details before we do. But the way to think about it is try to break it into smaller steps. Like for example, hey, how do I access information from Amazon? How do I access information from Flipkart? Do they have APIs, or are you going to download and put that Excel somewhere, etc.? So kind of step by step break it down, and then use like skills to orchestrate different parts. And you can also append multiple skills. You can have individual skills, and you can have global skills which knows how to use all of these skills. You can kind of like set it up that way. So that's kind of how you go about solving something like that.
There's just one question there, Bala. First of all, this is very useful, and I just want to understand. So I open the terminal. So from there, on the Windows terminal, I'll have to create these skills. Is that the understanding?
See, you can use the terminal. I think it is there in Claude Cowork also. I've not used it so much to specify there, but you can explore that also. But take a day to figure out how do you use terminal in Windows. I think it will be quite useful. A lot of YouTube videos which are available. Yeah.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Sure. Varun has asked, how do you monitor token usage by giving it such a large context? Yeah, see, the context you saw is very, very less, right? So we barely wrote a few lines. There are times where we give, there is a 1 million token context window that is actually available. I'm not going to comment on whether it is useful or not, but so I run about like 2 to 3 projects at any point in time in 3 different terminals, and they're almost always running whenever I'm actually kind of like awake. So, but I just about complete my token usage. Maybe because of some ways I'm actually using, etc. I don't necessarily focus on token optimization at this point because I'm using the $100 plan. Mainly because it's not time efficient for me. One day when we start hitting it more and more, then probably we'll look at how do I actually cut down that at this point. But right now I'm not like too worried because I'm not using the APIs at all. I'm only using the max plan, and I'm just about hitting it, which I'm happy with, right? But whenever we do the optimization, probably I'll come back and I'll have some inputs. Right now, it is not like worth my time to go and figure out where am I spending a lot of tokens, etc. I know so there is something called /insights. If you do it in Claude, it will give you insights about where you're spending a lot of tokens, etc. I have seen some of those, which some of the pointers I know, but I've not gotten around to optimizing those things. How do you toggle among, this is a good question. So how do you toggle among Sonnet, Haiku, and Opus? Also, if you want to use connectors or additional tools in the terminal, how do you go about it? Okay, first question is, how do you toggle? So just press /model and enter. It will give you all the different models. So you can choose whatever you actually want. So that's a very, very easy. Another thing to do is probably this will be quite useful to all of you is whenever you are like when you're working on something, if you want to, there is something called mode. Is there a mode here? So when you press model, you can switch between models, which is much easier. Then there is another thing called mode. You don't always want Claude to go and like run and do things. Sometimes you want it to think, right? So what I do is there is something called shift tab. I'm going to press Shift tab. It says accept edits. If you can see the bottom here, if I press Shift tabs again, it says plan mode. So when it gets into plan mode, Claude will not write anything, do any work. It'll just plan. It is very, if you're working on something large or if you're thinking through, it's better to switch to plan mode and start doing stuff. Okay. And once it is completed, then it will switch to edit mode itself, or you can manually switch to edit mode and you can start working. So this is a very, very useful feature that everybody should use. Okay. Second question is, how do you want to use additional tools in the terminal? How do you go about it? Very, very simple. Just go, if you have, let's say you want to use HubSpot, just ask it to say like, hey, I want to connect HubSpot. Can you tell me how? Or can you connect it by yourself? Most likely it will do. In some cases, it will simply ask you, hey, copy paste the API key in this place. That's the only thing it will ask. So it will figure out all of those things by itself. The beauty of it is you don't have to do anything. It will do it. Or if it is struggling, just if it is a tool which is not very well known, just go copy the documentation URL, paste it in Claude saying that, hey, this is a documentation URL, you figure it out and it will do. Yeah, so very nice, useful way. How is Claude better than Gen AI tools, ChatGPT, Gemini, Grok for a non-tech guy? This is a little more complicated than typing prompts. Yeah, it is the same as typing prompts. Actually, I don't think the prompts differ from either of those. Claude is, from a underlying model point of view, it is actually much smarter compared to others. And it's more of an aesthetic is what I know. The benchmarks are keep shifting. I've not tried the latest codex, but when I tried using Gemini Pro versus this versus Codex, the earlier version of Codex, there was a mild difference in terms of the quality of work it actually does. First time write is very important for me because the way I work is very ad hoc, right? So I give it a task, I go do something else, I come back, the result is actually there. That means I wanted to get it right the first time. I don't have a lot of time to give feedback and adjust things. I see that Claude actually needs less feedback when I actually work with it. So that's the only thing I can say. Do we need a Claude Pro version for effectively use Claude Code? Yeah, largely yes. The way you use in a terminal will use .md files or context within the folder root level. Yeah, it'll use both. We'll have folder. First, it takes like the root level, then you have like folders, etc. There are a lot of ways to kind of build this context. A lot of people have written guides on it. You can actually look at those things also. For thinking type of projects, AI will give you suggestions which you chat with it and refine. How do you mark some of those as final approved and reject the rest? So I showed you the plan mode right now. So just go to the plan mode and do it, and it'll ask you questions and you can suggest how to edit. It itself creates a plan file and it follows a plan file. So that is something that you can do. Can you show how to create a brand guideline skills as well? Yeah, I think Gautam has actually answered, so we don't have time to show it right now. I'm going to skip that. Can you host your files in a Google Drive folder, or does it need to be local to your system? It needs to be accessible from a terminal. I think that's about it. You don't, even if it is not accessible in your local folder, you can give it a path and give it access to that path. You simply say, hey, available for anyone to view, then it can access those files. So that's something I've actually done in the past. Right. Is skill similar to custom GPT for a specific task? Yes, that's true. How to review the skill and iterate? Yeah, so just open the skill. Yeah, every time you see it is making a mistake, you can give suggestions on what to change, etc. Okay, a lot of people have already given feedback. I'm gonna take this really good bold tool. What tool is used to create it? It is Claude. Yeah, so Claude just creates a website using the same programming language, and I just print it. That's it. Thank you for the feedback. What kind of recurring cost do you incur to run this? It must be usage based. I'm using something called a Claude Max plan. I pay about $100 a month, and that covers almost everything. The only other thing I pay for is Nano Banana token, like the image creation. I spend few $100 a month there, so not much actually. Anubhav has asked, do you see skills as a way to handle scenarios which could require multiple personas in a single workflow? Like if I'm writing a product doc, I might need different personas to review. But that's actually a very nice way of thinking about skills. But I would say think about agents. So there is a concept called agents if you are interested. So you can create your own personas, etc. So try that. That will be helpful. How do you pull metrics? So what I've given is, so this is, I think, for using pulling metrics for my website performance. So there is something called Postdoc. Postdoc is very similar to Google Analytics, slightly better. It gives you analytics and it is accessible via APIs. They have an MCP server. They also have APIs. I used to use MCP servers. I've realized that APIs is much faster and better. So I gave it the API keys. It knows the API documentation. I've given it a skill. So it just calls the API, pulls the data, and it knows how to analyze the data. So it does all of those things by itself. Why did you need, Shashank has asked, why did you need two different agents, Mitra and Adam? Give it Adam's task to, why can't give the Adam's task to Mitra? So Mitra has so when you think about agents, you need to figure out what is the specific purpose. Now, if I'm thinking of physical org, I will need one person to think about the strategy and plan. I want a separate person to write content, right? If I merge both of them, they get confused. So it's always better to kind of separate and isolate their responsibilities. At the same time, I'm running Mitra once a week and I'm running Adam once a day. So the way when they run is also very different. So it's much easier to kind of give different names and separate their work. Please share this deck. Yeah, will do. For ChatGPT, can you create multiple? You can create multiple folders, subfolders, parallel projects you want. AI to help you come with meaningful data. How the same can be managed here? It's the same way, I guess. Is there a good source for some pure pre-baked skills? Oh yeah, there are plenty. You can just check in the website. Claude itself has a lot of approved ones. Be very careful about downloading skills from the website. There is a lot of scam that is going around. So download from authorized sources. Claude has its own set of public skills, which are actually very useful, but be extremely careful. They have a way of stealing information. How video is getting edited automatically. So there is a package called FFmpg, MEPG or something, which is a video editing module, which runs on like Linux. Claude has downloaded it and it uses it to edit. It writes scripts to kind of like edit this whole thing. It understands the transcript. From the transcript, it is timestamped, so it figures out where the gaps are and uses that timestamp and edits the timestamp from the video file. So kind of how it actually works. Again, I have not written a single line of code for any of this. I wouldn't even know where to start, but Claude has actually made all of this possible. Any hacks to get the account suspension removed? Sorry, guys, I can't really help there. Can you lift and shift all the folders to a different machine and continue as usual? Yes, you can. So if you are using a Mac to Mac, Mac has a migration philosophy. You can directly use it. Even if not, just zip the entire folder structure. Like I have /projects where it starts from. I can zip the entire thing and migrate to a different file because it's all local file. Everything gets copied. I also make sure I check in specific projects to Git so that I don't lose information. But yeah, you can easily migrate it that way. How did Claude get access to your Anno Banana? Did you share your Google credentials? That's a very good question. So what I did is I created a skill for how to generate images. In the skill, I say, hey, use Nano Banana. This is the Google API, and this is the model you're supposed to use. Okay. Then in that skill, also I've said, read the API keys from this env folder when you run. So when it runs, it automatically picks it up from the env folder and runs. Claude never gets access to the API key. Right? So that's kind of how it is set up. If you just ask Claude to do it, it'll help you do this very easy. The deck is generated was like a local web page, not a PPT. So there are minor important last minute changes. How do we do that? Well, that's brilliant question again. So what I do is I typically take a screenshot of this. I paste it in Claude. Terminal you can paste. You can just copy any image and paste it. And I simply say edit this, edit that, etc., which happens for a few iterations. Right? That's the process I actually follow. It is very, very effective because the number of changes I do is typically like for 10-15 minutes, which is totally fine.
So those changes are also AI based, right? You basically take a screenshot, ask it to change and give it back.
I don't edit anything. The changes are AI based. Yeah.
Hello. One quick question on the cloud usage. So the cloud has the, it coming under the token usage, and whenever you do operations with respect to your prompts, right? It doesn't explicitly like a Olama, could be any Coin 3.5 or any other model does for you. But it would be chargeable on the basis, right? So how better, because it's given the performance is good, but it is like a pay as you go model, like how we use the cloud service. But what could be the better thing, like alternative you prefer to be doing that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't use the API because I don't have usage-based pricing because it's very expensive when it comes to usage-based pricing. Claude has this plan called Claude Max, Claude Pro, Claude Max, Claude Max 2x. So Max has probably what 20x usage compared to API. So it's a good deal. So I've subscribed to the Max plan, $100 plan. So the usage is kind of like included over there. More often than not, I don't fully utilize the usage. Actually, I'm about like 90% to 95%. Right? If I do the same thing in, let's say, API, I would probably spend about $500.
Okay, what about the Cloud Pro?
Pro is $20. I've seen that Pro is not enough for my usage.
Okay, fine. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Just try one of these and you will know where you actually land. Okay, did we have a class session yet? We already have it. We already did about 2-3 weeks ago. I think the video is also available on YouTube. You can check it. We have one demo, live installation planned, but I don't know when. We will probably do it sometime. Some comparison on Claude Code Pro and Max, holding up against Emergent. I think Emergence is for a different purpose. Emergence is for completely non-technical folks building specific applications. Claude basically is my team. Like, let's say I have a 4 or 5 member team to run my company. I use them. I create less software with Claude. I actually work with Claude on like operational stuff a lot more. That's where I spend my time. Right? I don't think Emergent can actually help over there, or if it helps, I don't know. But Emergent is meant for people who are trying to build, vibe coded software. At least that's what I understand. Yeah, what's a good replacement for terminal in Windows? Yeah, I've not used Windows in a long time. I'm not sure. I used to use the control R in run. You have a CMD command prompt you get, but I think there are better ways to do that now. Karthik, you're a lifesaver, man. Thank you for answering so many questions. If you have multiple systems like desktop and laptop, data is saved on the cloud or Google Drive accessible to the system. Can you ask Claude to work on a project in a particular folder inside that Google Drive folder and then continue this again at home on another system? I think Karthik has answered it very well. Yes, you can sync your Google Drive across, and that's kind of like the best way to go about it, right? We are using client Jira. Can we explore gathering an automated daily, weekly report to track team performance and utilization? From Akansha. Okay, keep in mind the potential access and security limitations. This is a brilliant use case, Akansha. So what you can do is, I don't know if Jira allows it, you can provide read-only access to Claude, okay, from Jira, and ask it to run it like every day, and it should be able to generate that report for you. We do a lot of reporting with that. So for some of my projects, so I use Metabase. I don't even write the Metabase queries. I simply say, hey, these are the reports I want to see. Claude creates an entire Metabase report with all the charts and tables and other things neatly set up with filters. It does all of those things by itself because it understands Metabase APIs. So it's a beautiful use case that you can use for. Have you tried using Claude to automate mailbox management? Yeah, so I'm a little paranoid on security. So I am not comfortable giving access to my mailbox for to Claude or any of the models. To be frank, I run one which is on Telegram and I never use Telegram. So that's the only thing. But I'm very skeptical of giving personal information, though I don't think we have a choice in some time. But yeah, that's just me. I wouldn't want to do this. And second, as a philosophy, I make sure that I write all my emails handwritten because I'm worried that I'll lose my skill of articulating if I stop writing emails by myself. So that's something I'm very particular about. What is the difference between Cursor and Claude Code? Yeah, Cursor is an IDE and Claude is a terminal. I think we covered it a few times earlier, right? So Cursor is meant for back and forth interactions where you follow what an AI is doing and giving instructions. Claude is more of like hands-off approach where you give an instruction, you go do something else and it will finish the job for you. So it's a different way of working. Save the chat, folks. The answer from the chat from Gautam. Yeah, Gautam is phenomenal. I'm going through the chat. Okay, cool. Session is useful. Thanks a lot. Can I connect Claude to platform like Shopify for daily data analysis? I think so. Yes. Claude has a MCP, if I remember. And if they have an API, you can definitely If they allow this data to be accessible, you can definitely use it. It'll be very, very interesting project. If you do build it, like, let us know. I think we'll be very interested in this. One difference in prompt I see is you are an expert in customer analysis, etc. The model figures out the intent guess. Yeah, I think that was some time ago. I don't think it needs to do all of that. If you are building an agent, the specific persona, then probably yes, that will actually make sense. For other work, default usage is great. Is there a good skill you can suggest for basic video editing or changing aspect ratios? I think you can just ask Claude to figure it out and then build a skill by itself. I've tried using some publicly available skills. I've not found them to be very exciting because I had to always make changes. So the way I approach this is do the work by myself with Claude and ask Claude to create a skill out of it. Clips, cuts, and changing aspect ratios should be very, very straightforward. Claude does it all the time. What are some good resources to learn the structures and basic coding on terminal? Okay, I think we will probably try to attach some guides, some good YouTube videos which actually cover it, right? So we'll try to do that. Yeah, I think that will be helpful to people. But in general, you should be able to find some good research available, or even ask Claude or ChatGPT on how to get started. I think it should guide you very well. For MIS preparation was using AI in Google Workspace Sheets for classification of expenses. At first used AI formula, then used Google Workspace flows with a custom Gemini for classification, and then using app script. All three use cases had inconsistency in classification. Okay, ChatGPT subscription will be classified as technology expenses for one debit, and another case will be a subscription. So I think here, see, this is the part. Claude has, or any AI has different mindset. It works on different things. I don't think you should depend on the right classification to any AI at any point in time. The way to think about it is probably can you do a new folder or a news sheet which gives you what are the different categories that you are allowing, right? And what is the meaning of each of those categories? You create like there's kind of like a master data, and then any AI can actually refer to it and classify it accordingly. So that's the best way. So you basically give a list of categories by yourself. Okay. How do you set up the env folder? Karthik has actually answered it very well. Okay, I think that's the end of it. I just rushed through the chat. Anything else, folks?
Hey Bala, if you're still there, I might have missed you answering the question on Emergent. If you could just deep dive a little bit into, see, I use Emergent and I've got a couple of apps that are live as well. I have seen Claude Code. I've got it on my system, but I don't use it extensively. But as I understand, there is some setting up which needs to be done in terms of your files, folder structure, how you create and save context, how you're able to modify that. So I wanted to know how Emergent and Claude Code compare in terms of the ease of getting the output. Like if I want to make an app and I'm a non-coder, but I've developed a couple of these things. Now, if I want to get to that point and I've seen the quality of output from Emergent, what would it take to replicate the same in Claude? And one data point is that I'm working, my friend is a CTO of IoT startup. So he's using Claude Max, where you get 1 million tokens as context. So I know the 200K context versus 1 million context, the difference in the output. So just some some wisdom on this.
Yeah, see, okay. So the way to think about it is Emergent and Claude Code are meant for completely different personas. See, Emergent is meant for, at least this is what, I've never used Emergent, by the way. I've used Lovable, I've used the Replit and other folks. So
yes,
keep with a pinch of salt. So Emergent is meant for building vibe-coded apps. Okay, they give you like a full platform by itself. You don't really have to know. You just give prompts and you build the app that you actually want. They take care of hosting. They take care of all of those things, right?
Right.
Yeah. So Claude Code is kind of different. It is meant for it is not just meant for like building applications. While it is called code, it is not just meant for like building vibe-coded applications. So while you can actually do that, right? But even if you do, because all the use cases that we saw today is for daily work rather than building applications, right? Which is one big difference. The second difference, even if you think about like building applications, right? Emergence gives you all the platform level things out of the box. So you don't have to really worry about those stuff. But in case of Claude Code, it is not. it is going to give you obviously a very, very high quality code. I would say Emergent also is internally using Claude Code only because Claude is the best model for coding. So Claude Code will give you all that like beautiful code, nice setup, it will debug by itself, it will do all of those things by itself. But like the hosting and other things, you still have to figure out, right? And it is meant for, at least from a development point of view, it is meant for people who know, like mainly built from an engineer's point of view. While it has become yes, but it is built more from an engineer's point of view. That is a difference. If you want to build a vibe code apps and you don't want to get into these nitty-gritties, then yeah, like Emergent is probably a better deal from an ease of use point of view. But if the only place I would say Claude Code is actually useful is the ability for it to compound. For example, let's say you're building the first application Emergent and you're building the second application. Can it automatically take the learnings of the first application and figure out a way to kind of connect it to your second applications in a better manner without you being explicit about it? Probably not. Right? Those are things that they don't have. Claude basically does it. So it compounds. When you use Claude Code more and more, for non-technical use especially, the value compounds over a period of time. That is the only difference. But if Emergent is working for you, I would say like just go with Emergent because it is a task to get a server, host your models, add your environmental variables, etc. So all of these things is definitely a task, and it takes time for you to get those things out. And if you think that is not useful for you, then yeah, no need to use it.
Okay, for that specific use case, it makes more sense. Now, I think Claude Code is a lot more powerful in the sense that you can actually customize it. You customize the permissions, and you're able to deliver a more complex outcome with it. So yeah, I do see that it's an engineer's
One
tool,
question
like you
on
said.
the usage of the Pro or Max, right? So let's say if I don't use the tokens, those tokens will lapse, right, by end of this month. And if it is a basic thing, like, when going for the cloud, it has the $5 credit, right? For that, what is your experience on using that, for the development or, to be like to work on the product management, some other work?
Hey, Kumar, just can I give you one feedback? This is the second time you cut someone else off.
You're in mute, I guess.
I'm not on mute. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, Bala.
Right.
Hello?
Yeah, can you hear us? Okay. Kumar, I don't think you can hear us. So
yes, I'm able to hear you.
So yeah, like this is the second time you cut somebody off, right? I think I would let I think Siddharth, right? Finish his question so that we'll come back to you.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks, Bala. So I was just thinking about how there's a recursive learning as a possibility in Claude. And I'd spoken to that CTO, a friend of mine, just yesterday about this. And he said that a persona is not created, but the recursive learning or the compounding that you spoke about happens because all the tasks that you have fed to Claude get stored in that one file or one folder. And because of that, that is where the use case for your local user becomes stronger. Is that specific area? That file is what causes it.
Yeah, that is correct. So when I say compounding, that's what I actually mean. Okay. So when I say compounding, that's what I mean. Because the models don't learn by themselves, like from any other inputs. When they try, they don't have a reinforcement learning automatically. They build it whenever they retrain it is only way they actually learn. But the way they learn your context is by local files. That's all. Like
context is being created.
Files and the local files. Yeah. And the memory. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Bala. I mean, there's a lot I'd love to talk about this. Maybe another time or when I meet you in person.
Yeah. Kumar, sorry, we can go ahead now. What was your question? You said something about the token usage, right?
Yeah, I mean, when I was going through I worked on Claude and I worked on Gemini. I've seen that Claude has a lot of usage, but Gemini doesn't give any free credits, but the Claude will give that free credits like initially. Not in India, but outside India. But if it is purchased for $5, right, initially, so how effective it is?
I have no idea here. I have no idea. Like I've not used the $5 plan in a while.
Okay.
I think you should just check it out once. Yeah.
Okay, no issues. Thank you.
Awesome. Any other questions, folks? It's been a long session. Thank you for a lot of you staying till the end, right? If there are no more questions, then we can end. Yeah, so do consider joining our community. We will host the recording and on YouTube. Give me some time. I'm traveling for the next week, so I won't be able to do this till I come back. So give me about like 10 days before we actually post this video. Meanwhile, just check out our content. If you think it is useful, do spread the word, and hopefully see you in the next session. Thanks,
Bala,
everyone.
just a quick request. If you can share the PPT, till the time you get the video in place for us, I think that will be great.
Are you part of the community?
I am not sure. It's a WhatsApp community because I do get emailers from you. I'm not sure if I'm still there in the community or not.
Okay, I'll try to do that. Send it to the email. Yeah.
If you could
Yeah,
just
the
help
PPT.
us. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, go ahead. I was done.
I was just requesting if you could just share details in terms of how we can sort of become members of the community. That'll be great.
I'm going to paste URL. Just go here. I pasted the website URL in the chat. Thanks, Akash. So just click, fill up the form, and we'll add you there.
Got it. Thanks, Bala. Sorry, Anubhav, for talking again.
Hi, Bala. Can you hear me?
Yes, Jyoti.
Yeah, Bala, I have a question. So in a company, we have started using Windsurf, and this has the same modules that is there in Claude Code, like Opus 4 or 6 or whatever. But and this ID tools are also able to call tool calling. So technically, they should be similar to the terminal as well as ID usages. But do you see a difference in their output when you use?
Yes, I used to use anti-gravity and VS Code before this, or with Claude Code. But when I shifted to on the terminal, I saw a massive difference in terms of the biggest unlock for me, frankly speaking, is not the coding part. IDE, I think, does very similar in terms of like building apps and doing code, etc., which still constitutes a lot of my work. But I'm able to do a lot of operational work with Claude Code, which wasn't possible in IDE. Let's say I created this deck, or I'm analyzing this particular invoices that we actually saw. It'll be very difficult for me to replicate that in the IDE. Right? Now, that's the unlock that I actually got from Claude Code, where a lot of my daily activities have gotten automated.
Do you see a pure coding difference between this IDE and Claude Code? Not much.
Yes, ideally, I used to follow what changes are being made, what is being edited, etc. Right? Which is, let's say, I'm working with an AI, but Claude Code on like terminal for making code, I treat it as like a junior developer. So when I was a product manager, I never used to review their code. I simply check for like outcome whether all of these things are actually done right. Right? Now that's how I actually work with Claude Code. I give the set of instructions on what needs to be built, what is the reason, etc. It asks me questions, whatever. I have set up a workflow for where it asks me questions until it is 100% sure. It then writes a PRD. I review the PRD. Then it creates its own engineering tasks on certain principles. It writes test cases. And once it is done, then I go ahead and review all of the outcomes. I basically test it end to end, which is how I used to work with my engineers, which is the difference that I actually see. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. All right. Okay. Cool, folks. If there's nothing else, we can close. Thanks a lot for joining and have a fantastic weekend. See you all in the next session. Bye.
Thanks a lot.